Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We are holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Beis, and we will be learning today in Yirtzeh Hashem Daf Lamed Tes Amid Beis. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Beis HaKnesses. We pick up today on Lamed Tes Amid Aleph, Siman Kuf Nun Gimel Sif Yud Dalid, 4 lines off the bottom of Lamed Tes Amid Aleph in the Shulchan Aruch. Says the Mechaber Sif Yud Dalid. Ruvain sha'amar karka zu ani noisein livnois aleha beis hakneses. Ruvain donated a piece of karka, a piece of property, to the tzibur for use to build a beis hakneses. So let's touch the words here. Ruvain sha'amar, Ruvain who said, karka zu ani noisein. I am donating this piece of land. Livnois aleha beis hakneses, in order to build on it a beis hakneses. V'loy rotzu ovdei kechavim lahanichan livnois beis hakneses. And then guess what happens? They go through the permit process. They go to the zoning board, and the zoning board says you cannot build a shul on that piece of property. So now we have a situation where Ruvain donated a property, he donated a piece of land for the specific use of building a beis hakneses on it. And now the tzibur cannot build a beis hakneses on it. All right. Va'akol oimrim, the tzibur says, livnois aleha bayis l'talmud Torah. The tzibur says, all right, we weren't able to build a beis hakneses on that piece of property, but we could build a beis hamedrash on that piece of property. Now, to us nowadays, this sounds a little bit strange. What's the difference between a beis hakneses and a beis hamedrash? Again, in the times of the Mechaber, they had 2 different types of rooms. They had one building that was a beis hakneses, it was miyuchad l'tefillah. They had another room that was a beis hamedrash that was miyuchad for learning Torah. Why is it that the Ovdei Kechavim did not allow them to build a beis hakneses, but they allowed them to build a beis hamedrash? Maybe that's because to allow them to build a beis hakneses where we're going to be mispalel and we're going to daven to the Rebbeinu Shalom, maybe the Ovdei Kechavim, maybe they viewed that as a slap in the face to their deity, so they didn't want it. A beis hamedrash, you want to build a study hall? Go ahead, build a study hall, I don't care. But for whatever reason, they did not allow the construction of a beis hakneses on that property, but they were willing to countenance the construction of a beis hamedrash on that property. Okay, but Ruvain Omer, Ruvain, the donor, turns around and says, Adaita dahachi loy nadri. I didn't make the neder, I didn't make the donation. I didn't commit to donate the piece of property for a beis hamedrash. I committed to donate the piece of property for a beis hakneses. And you're not able to build a beis hakneses, I want the property back. So what Ruvain wants is, he wants to back out of the deal. He no longer wants to give the piece of property. The tzibur says, listen, you gave the piece of property, we can't build a beis hakneses, but we could build a beis hamedrash. So let us build a beis hamedrash. Says the Mechaber, what's the halacha here? First of all, loy matzi Ruvain hadarbe. Ruvain cannot back out of the donation. He undertook to donate the property to the tzibur. He has to stick to that. He can't go back and say, I'm not donating the property to the tzibur. And we're going to see why. However, now, says the Mechaber, precisely what the tzibur can do with the property is going to depend on a few variables. Says the Mechaber, Im Ruvain lo haya darsham, if Ruvain doesn't live in this neighborhood, so if Ruvain is an outsider, and he donated this piece of property to this town to be able to use as a beis hakneses, to build a beis hakneses, now they can't. They want to build a beis hamedrash, so we already established Ruvain can't back out. What could the tzibur do? So it depends. If Ruvain does not live in that town, if he's not a native, if he's an outsider, so then, says the Mechaber, Yecholim l'shanoisa, the tzibur could go ahead and they could change what they were going to use the piece of property for. So Ruvain donated the piece of property for construction of a Beis HaKnesses. The township is not allowing them to build a Beis HaKnesses. They want to build a Beis HaMedrash. Says the Mechaber, first of all, Reuven can't back out. So the donation sticks, and the property is going to be donated to the township. What could the township do? Says the Mechaber, if Reuven is not a resident of the town, if Reuven is an outsider, then the township could take the piece of property and they could change its designation. Reuven wanted to use it for a Beis HaKnesses. They can't build a Beis HaKnesses. They could use it now for a Beis HaMedrash. But not only that, the Mishnah Berurah is going to tell us that when the Mechaber says over here, Yechalim l'shanoisa, that the townspeople could change the designation, they could change what they're going to use the piece of property for, says the Mishnah Berurah, they could even use it for a Dvar Rishus. They could use it for chulin. They could build a dining room on that piece of property. They could build a dormitory for a yeshiva. They could build a dining room for a yeshiva. They could build a dining room for aniyim. They could build a chasana hall. They could build, it doesn't have to be even a davar shebektusha. And we'll discuss why this is. But, says the Mechaber, v'imhu mibnei oisa ha'ir, but if Reuven, the donor, is actually one of the townsfolk, if he lives in that town, so again, he can't back out from the donation, but in that case, says the Mechaber, einam rashoy l'shanoisa, the townspeople cannot decide to use the piece of property for something else. He gave it for a Beis HaKnesses, the townspeople cannot say they want to use it for something else. Imhu oimed v'tzaveach, if he's getting up and he's protesting. Literally, it means imhu oimed v'tzaveach, if he's getting up and screaming. If he's getting up and he's protesting that he doesn't want the piece of property to be used for anything else, then the townsfolk cannot use it for anything else. What are they going to do with it? It's going to remain empty. It's going to remain empty until such a time as the zoning commissioners change and suddenly the township allows them to build a Beis HaKnesses. Then they'll build a Beis HaKnesses. The Ramah says over here in the parentheses, what does Oimed V'Tzaveach mean? Pirish V'Tzayek. He's crying out. He's saying, I protest. I gave it to be used for the building of a Beis HaKnesses, and I insist that it be used for a Beis HaKnesses. Continues the Mechaber, this is true. El imkein yesham chever ir. This is true, that if the donor is one of the townsfolk, he could protest, and he could prevent them from using the property for anything else. When is that true? Elim ken yesham chever ir. Unless there's a Talmud Chacham in the town, who's a Talmud Chacham that everybody in the town turns to for decisions on Oiskei Tzibur. Right? Rashi's lashon in the Gemara and Megillah is Chaver Ir is Talmud Chacham hamisasek b'tzarchei tzibur. If there's a Talmud Chacham in the town who is oisik b'tzarchei tzibur, the decisions of the tzibur are made al piv by his decisions. So then the Chalman the Asi Adaita Didei Asi, then all the decisions are up to him, and then he's going to be the one that's going to make the decision what to do with the property. Now, says the Ramah in the parentheses here, Veshiva Tuvei Ir Dinam Kechever Ir. If there's a board, if there's Zayin Tuvei Ir, so then the Zayin Tuvei Ir have the status of a Chever Ir, and the decision of what to do with the property will be up to the Zayin Tuvei Ir. So again, before we go to the Mishnah Berurah, let's just recap what we saw over here in Sif Yodalit. The case in Sif Yodalit is, we have a very generous donor. Reuven got up and Reuven said, I'm donating a piece of karka. I'm donating a lot, a buildable lot, to the tzibur. What am I donating it for? I'm donating it for the purposes of building a Beis HaKnesses. Very nice, beautiful. They're ready to honor him at a dinner. Now the problem is that they go to the zoning board. The zoning board says, sorry, we're not letting you build a Beis HaKnesses. So he gave the piece of property. He said, go ahead, build a shul on it. They can't build a shul on it. They want to build a Beis HaMedrash. So the first question was, can Reuven back out? Could Reuven turn around and say, okay, I was willing to give the piece of karka for a Beis HaKnesses. You can't build a Beis HaKnesses. All right, it didn't work out. Give me my property back. On that, said the Mechaber right away, no, you cannot back out. You can't back out. You gave it to the tzibur, you gave it to the tzibur. All right, now we've determined that it belongs to the tzibur, but we still have to determine what can the tzibur do with the piece of property. Said the Mechaber, that depends. this Ruvain, this donor, is he one of the townsfolk or is he an outsider? Says the Mechaber, if he's not one of the townsfolk, then the people of the town can decide to do with the piece of property whatever they want. They could build a Beis HaMedrash, but they could even build a Chasana hall. They could do something that's a mamish dvar rishus. They don't even have to use it for a davar shebekdusha. The Mishnah Berurah is going to tell us that the reason for this is, since Ruvain is not one of the residents of the town, the assumption is that when he gave the piece of property to the town, even though what was spoken about was that it would be used for the construction of a Beis HaKnesses, but really he was giving it to the townsfolk for whatever they need, whatever they determine that they need, whatever they determine a good use for the property is, that's what they'll use it for, because he has no skin in the game. He doesn't live there. It has nothing to do with him. So the assumption is, unless there was a specific Tanai, like the Mishnah Berurah is going to say, if Ruvain said, I'm giving it to you to be used for the construction of a Beis HaKnesses, and if it turns out that you're not going to build a Beis HaKnesses, I want my property back, he certainly could do that. If he did that, he would get the property back. But we're talking about a case where he didn't do that. He said, you need a piece of property to build a Beis HaKnesses, I'm giving it to you. Okay, Beis HaKnesses was mentioned, but it wasn't a Tanai kafel. It wasn't a double-edged Tanai, that I'm giving it to you for use as a Beis HaKnesses, but if you can't use it as a Beis HaKnesses, I get it back. That was never spoken out. In that case, the Mishnah Berurah is going to tell us that the Mechaber held that in such a case, really, he's giving it to the tzibur for the tzibur to do with it what they will. So they can't use it as a Beis HaKnesses. They want to use it for a Chasana hall. They could go ahead and they could use it for a Chasana hall. So says the Mechaber, if this person is not one of the townsfolk. Then the Mechaber said, but if he is one of the townsfolk, then he could protest. Why now suddenly could he protest? So the Mishnah Berurah is going to explain, very simple. Because now he's a resident of the town like any other resident of the town. The halacha is, if there's a Beis HaKnesses, or in this case there's a piece of property that was intended to be used as a Beis HaKnesses, and now the townspeople want to be mishaneh, now they want to go ahead and they want to use it for something else, any resident of the town has the right to protest. So he's no less than any other resident of the town, so the reason he could protest is not because he's the donor, because even in the first case, where he's not a resident of the town, he's the donor. So what changes if he's a resident of the town or not? The difference is that if he's a resident of the town, he has the right to protest like any other resident of the town, who could get up and say, hey, this property was intended for construction of a Beis HaKnesses. I don't want you to use it for a Chasana hall. So he has the right to protest like anybody else does, and in that case, the property is going to sit empty until such a time that the township allows them to build a Beis HaKnesses. So now that we had that recap, let's turn back to limud tes amud aleph. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah, ois cotton pay aleph. Loi motzi. The Mechaber said, Ruvain, the first halacha that the Mechaber had to tell us was Ruvain's protesting. He says, I gave the land for the construction of a Beis HaKnesses. You can't build a Beis HaKnesses. I want the land back. The Mechaber said, no. Loi motzi hadri. Loi motzi Ruvain hadarbe. Ruvain can't back out. Says the Mishnah Berurah Pei Aleph. Why? Denase neder miki amar karkazu lebeis haknesses. Once he goes ahead and he says karkazu lebeis haknesses, that's already a neder to donate the piece of land to the tzibur. V'chidar minan. And this falls under the rubric of what the Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah Vav Amud Aleph. The pasuk says, "Moitzas fasecha tishbar va'asisa." That which comes out of your mouth, you should watch to do. Kasher nadarta l'Hashem Elokecha. You must do as you made a neder to Hashem. Nidava asher dibarta beficha. You have to fulfill the nidava. You have to fulfill the donation asher dibarta beficha. The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah darshans this whole pasuk, and the Gemara says that the word beficha is referring to any commitment, to any neder to give tzedakah. And over here, this person made a neder to give tzedakah. Once he said karkazu lebeis haknesses, that stands as a neder to give this piece of land to tzedakah to the tzibur. So he has to fill it. Beficha zu tzedakah. Ice cotton pay bays. Then what the Mechaber told us was, if Ruvain, the donor, is not a resident of the town, so then Yecholim L'Shanoisa. Then the township could decide, they could make a change. They could be Mishane, and they could change the designation. They could change what they're going to use the piece of property for from what Ruvain said. Says the Mishnah Berurah, and he brings this down, I believe, from the Magen Avram. Yes, says the Mishnah Berurah, Va'afilu l'dvar harishus. They could even go ahead and decide to use the property for mamish chulin. They could use it to build a chassid hall. Va'av shehuzman akarka lebeis hakneses. Even though this piece of property was designated, it had hazmana for a beis hakneses, like we've said many times, hazmana lav milsehi. Hazmana is not significant. Kidala el sevches, like we said earlier in sevches. Va'av shehu oimid v'tzeveach. Even though Reuven is standing up and screaming, Eini chafetz, I do not want this to happen. Ela sheyeh lebeis hakneses. I'm only maskim that the piece of property should be used for a beis hakneses. Lo mishkechinan bei. We don't listen to him. Kevan de meikara stama amar. Since when he made the donation, he made the donation stam. He made it in a general way. V'loi kaflei litnoei. He didn't make a double-edged tonight. Deloy Amar, he never said, Im loy yivnu beis hakneses, if you don't build the beis hakneses, yachziru li akarka. Yes, he said, I'm giving the piece of property for use to construct the beis hakneses. But he didn't make it a Tanai kafel. He didn't say both sides of the Tanai. He didn't say, I'm giving it to construct the beis hakneses, and if you fail to construct the beis hakneses, I get it back. So therefore, Arinon, we now say, Adaita didhu yava meikara. When he originally made the donation, he made the donation with the das, that whatever the townspeople want to do with it, that's what they'll do. V'hashta kadabe, and now he wants to back out. V'loy motzi, and the Mordechai tells us that in such a case, he cannot back out. So again, the first halach is, he can't back out. Even though he gave it to be a beis hakneses and now it can't be a beis hakneses, sorry, he cannot back out. Second halacha, not only he can't back out, if he doesn't live in the town, then we assume that he made the donation with the understanding that the townspeople will do with the property whatever they want, and now, therefore, the townspeople can't make it into a beis hakneses. They could change their mind, they could do with it whatever they will, even a dvar shus, they could even go ahead and use it as a chassid hall. Then the Mechaber told us that if Ruvain does live in the town, v'imhu mibnei oisa ha'ir, if Ruvain does live in the town, then the Mechaber said, Einam rashayim l'shanoisa. Then the people of the town cannot change what they're going to use the property for. The property was given as a beis hakneses. Ultimately, the property has to be used to build a beis hakneses. Now they can't build a beis hakneses. All right, so it's going to lay empty. And hopefully one day they'll let you build a beis hakneses. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the bottom line of Lamed Tesam and Aleph. The Mishnah Berurah is cut Bei Gimel. Einam rashoim. In this case, they cannot change what they're going to use the property for. It's What the Mechaber wants to say is, Sheyachal la'akvam. The donor could prevent them from using it for something else. Sheyachal la'akvam, he could prevent them, Shaloi livnois alea beis hamedrash, and stop them from building a beis hamedrash. Av shehi kedusha chamura mizeh. Even though a beis hamedrash is actually a higher level of kedusha than a beis hakneses. So in this case, the tzibur is actually leveling up what they want to use the property for. He donated the property for the construction of a beis hakneses. They want to use it now as a beis hamedrash. So they want to level it up. Even in this case, the Mishnah Berurah tells us, the Mechaber says, the townspeople cannot make a change. He gave it for a beis hakneses. It can only be used as a beis hakneses. Kanal Bereisha Siman. Like we saw in the beginning of the Siman, that a beis hamedrash is a level up from a beis hakneses. Turn to Lamed Tesam Beis, says the Mishnah Berurah, V'atam, and the reason for this, the reason that the townspeople cannot change the usage of the property if the donor lives in the town is, Kevan de Isyahava Daita de Kuluhu, since this piece of property was given to the tzibur, and now the use of the property is dependent on the das of the tzibur, right? In other words, in the first case where the donor did not live in the town, so we say he gave it to the town. What does that mean? It means now it's up to the town to decide what to do. Who's the town? The town is all the residents of the town. He's not a resident of the town, so he has no say. So if the residents of the town want to use it for a bingo hall, they could go use it for a bingo hall. They could even use it as a dvar rishus. Now, too, he gave it to be used as a basic knesses. Again, he gave it a daita dekulu. Since he didn't make a tanai kafel, since he didn't say I'm giving it for a basic knesses, and if I can't use it for a basic knesses, I get it back. So he gave it al das the kohol. Right? That's what he... Al das hamokaim val das hakol. He gave it dependent on the das of the kohol, for the killer to use it for whatever they will. But now, says the Mishnah Berurah, guess what? He's a member of the town. He lives there. Like gara koicha meyechad mishar anshe ha'ir. He's no less than anybody else who lives in the town. Sheyichaylim lunchais kitcharaitzim l'shanois. Any member of the town has the power to protest when the tzibur is deciding to use something that was donated to the tzibur for a purpose other than what it was given for. Even though it comes out from what we learned earlier in this Siman, in Sivav, the Kedusha Chamura, that if the tzibur wants to level up the Kedusha, even though we said earlier, and this is a little bit confusing, why the Mishnah Berurah really sends us to Sivav. You see, in Sivav, back on Lamed Vav Amud Aleph, the Mechaber told us that you could sell a shul, you could sell a Beis HaKnesses, you could even sell a Sefer Torah in order to use the proceeds to support Talmidei Chachamim that are learning Torah or to marry off Yisayimim. That's what we learned. That's the halacha of Sivav. In the Bir Halacha in Sivav, the Chavetz Chaim said you can do this afilu beloy shiva tuvei ha'ir b'maimed anshe ha'ir. You could do this without the shiva tuvei ha'ir. The townspeople themselves could go ahead, the general membership, they can make a general membership meeting, and they could decide that they're going to sell a Beis HaKnesses in order to support people who are learning Torah. Now we have to see, it means if there's another Beis HaKnesses, whether you could do this without another Beis HaKnesses, big shiloh, we didn't get up to that yet. But assuming there is another Beis HaKnesses, so you're selling the Beis HaKnesses in order to support Talmidei Chachamim, or in order to marry off Yisayimim, Hachtasas Kala, Yisayimim, Yisaymos. So you could do it, and you could do it even without the Shiva Tuvei Ha'ir. And the Chavetz Chaim explains over there in Sivav, why could you do this without the Shiva Tuvei Ha'ir? The dinoi k'moi l'shar kedusha chamura the dai ba'anshe ha'ir levad. Because selling it in order to support Talmidei Chachamim, or selling the shul in order to marry off Yisayimim or Yisaymos, that's considered leveling up. And when you level up, you don't need Shiva Tuvei Ha'ir b'maimed anshe ha'ir. Even the anshe ha'ir could do it alone without the Zayin Tuvei Ha'ir. Now, how do I know that? That I know from Siv Zayin. Because in Siv Zayin we learned that the people who live in a small town, so they're able to sell their shul, their town is not a destination town, so they're considered the bailim, they're considered the owners of their Beis HaKnesses, and therefore they're allowed to decide that it's time to sell it, and they're allowed to make the sale. We said that the sale could be made by the Anshe Ha'ir alone, or by the Zayin Tuvei Ha'ir alone, or by the Zayin Tuvei Ha'ir b'maimed Anshe Ha'ir. What's the difference? If the Anshe Ha'ir sell it alone, so then the proceeds are encumbered, and you could only use them either to level up their Kedusha, or maybe to keep the Kedusha on the same level, based on the machlokes we had in Siv Beis. If you sell it, B'zayin Tuvei Ha'ir b'maimed anshe ha'ir, then you don't have to level up the Kedusha, you can even use the proceeds for Chulin. But one thing we see from Siv Zayin, and that is that the people who live in a town, in a kvar, in a small town, if they're going to level up the Kedusha of the proceeds, you don't need the agreement of everybody in the town. The Anshe Ha'ir could sell it without the Zayin Tuvei Ha'ir. Now, the Zayin Tuvei Ha'ir also live in the town. If the Anshe Ir are selling it without the Zayin Tuvi Ir, what does that mean? That means that you didn't consult the Zayin Tuvi Ir. That means that they never had a say in whether the sale should be done or not. And yet we see that you can make the sale, and the sale is a binding sale. So what the Mishnah Berurah is saying over here is, he's saying, over here, Ruvain lives in the town. Ruvain donated the piece of karka to be a Beis HaKnesses. The people of the town, now they can't build a Beis HaKnesses, so they want to be Meshana. They want to use this piece of property for a different usage. The Mechaber said, since the donor is a member of the town, he could protest. Why could he protest? Because any member of the town could protest. Frek the Mishnah Berurah, any member of the town could protest? If any member of the town could protest, even though they want to level the Kedusha up, they want to sell, they want to, not sell, they want to use a piece of property that was intended as a Beis HaKnesses, they want to level it up to use it as a Beis HaMedrash, you're telling me any member of the town could protest? But wait a second, we learned earlier in Siv Zayin, we learned that the people of the town could sell a Beis HaKnesses, and the Anshe Ir could do it alone without the Zayin Tuvi Ir, as long as the proceeds are going to be encumbered, meaning you're going to level them up, or at least keep them the same. Why? Don't the Zayin Tuvi Ir have the right to protest? So, I mean, that's what you're telling me over here. You're telling me that this donor could protest, so certainly the Zayin Tuvi Ir could protest. So the Mishnah Berurah says, even though it comes out from Sivav and Siv Zayin, and again, it's a mystery to me why you sent me to Sivav. L'cher, it's clearer in Siv Zayin. That if you're leveling up the Kedusha of the proceeds, then the Anshe Ir could change the designation, even without the consultation and the agreement of the Zayin Tuvi Ir. So how is it over here that we're saying that the donor could protest just by virtue of the fact that he lives in the town? Explains the Chafetz Chaim, over there in Siv Zayin, nobody's getting up and protesting. The sale was made by the Anshe Ir. Did anybody protest? Nobody protested. Over here, we're talking about where the donor is Oimed V'Tzayveach. That's what the Mechaber said. He could prevent it, Imhu Oimed V'Tzayveach. If he's getting up and he's protesting. Yeah, over there too. If the B'nai Kfar want to go sell their shul, and somebody's standing there and protesting and saying, no, you can't sell it, his protest is also a valid protest. But over there, we were talking about nobody was protesting. Over here, somebody's protesting. V'ayin b'Magen Avram, then the Chafetz Chaim says, take a look at the Magen Avram shehiksha. The Magen Avram asks another kasha. He says, the Yeridei Siman Reishtun Tesif Beis, in Yeridei Reishtun Tesif Beis, Isa Behedya, it says very clearly, De'ena Bailim Yechalim Limchais, Milivnais Beis HaMedrash, Kevichi Kedusha Chamura. In Yeridei, it says Fakert. In Yeridei, it says that if the people want to build a Beis HaMedrash, when the land was designated to be a Beis HaKnesses, the donor cannot protest. The Dachak is Atzmai L'Tarates, and the Magen Avram twists himself around in order to come up with a teretz. V'ayin b'Prima Gadim shemafakvik b'tirutzai. The Chafetz Chaim says, take a look at the Prima Gadim who disagrees with the Magen Avram's teretz. The Gam b'Bir Agra hiksha kush yezu the Magen Avram. The Bir Agra also asks this stira between our Siman here in our Chaim and the Halach in Yeridea. V'nishar b'din zeh b'tzarach iyun, and the Bir Agra leaves it as a tzarach iyun. Ois cotton pedalid l'shanoisa. So again, if the donor lives in the town, he could prevent the townspeople from changing the designation of the property. Or Messiah Mordechai, and the Mordechai says to become Makaim, Ruven Nami lo motzi l'shani silameheda. Yeah, Reuven could jump up and down and scream and say, no, you can't use the property to build a Beis Medrash. I gave it for building a Beis HaKnesses. I'm not allowing you to build a Beis HaMedrash. Yes, he could stop them from doing that, but he still can't back out of the donation. The lot still belongs to the tzibur. And even though now you can't build a Beis HaKnesses because of the authorities, maybe in 5 years the zoning commission will change, or they'll change the zoning laws, and now suddenly you'll be able to build a Beis HaKnesses. So it's going to stay leidik, it's going to stay empty for a long time. Ois cotton pay. Hey, the Ramah told us v'shiva tuvei ha'ir, the zayin tuvei ha'ir have the din of a chever ha'ir. The Mechaber said that if there's a Talmid Chacham in the town who's oisik b'tzarchei tzibur, if all the decisions of the tzibur are made based on the word of this Rav, so then this Rav has the final authority. And even if Ruvain is screaming, it says you can't use it for a Beis HaMedrash. If the Talmid Chacham will get up and say yes you can, then yes you can. And the Ramah said that the Shiva Tuvi Ha'ir have the same din and the same authority as the Chaver Ha'ir. Says the Mishnah Berurah, it doesn't mean the Shiva Tuvi Ha'ir alone. Ritzayin Laimar b'maimad hakol. The combination of the Shiva Tuvi Ha'ir b'maimad Anshir Ha'ir, that has the same power as a Chaver Ha'ir. Okay, now we go to the second line down here in the Mechaber Lamed Tes Amud Beis Sif Tes Vav. Says the Mechaber, Ein Adam Yachal Le'esar Chelkai Mi Beis HaKnesses. An individual does not have the right to prohibit his chelik, his portion in the shul, v'loy me'asvarim, or in the svarim of the shul. He cannot prohibit his portion for use by anybody else. What's at play over here? Well, the shul belongs to the tzibur. Who is the tzibur? Every member of the tzibur. Every member of the tzibur has a little bit of ownership in the Beis HaKnesses. Every member of the tzibur has a little bit of ownership in the Svarim, in the Sidurim, in the Chumashim, in the Sifrei Torah, in the Sifrei Nevi'im that belong to the tzibur. I used to joke around. Many years ago, I bought one share of Coca-Cola. But when I say I bought one share of Coca-Cola, I really bought one share of Coca-Cola. What do I mean? What I mean is, when you buy, generally speaking, when people buy stocks, they call up a brokerage, they call up a broker, and they say, buy me a share of Coca-Cola. Guess what? You don't really own that share of Coca-Cola. What do I mean that? A share of stock is represented by a certificate. And the certificate is made out to the name of the holder. When John Q. Citizen, generally speaking, buys a share of Coca-Cola, what he's really doing is the brokerage firm that he's dealing with has X amount of shares. I believe, if I remember correctly, it's called holding it in street name. You don't have a certificate that has your name on it. You basically have a commitment from the brokerage house that should you call up and say, I want my share of Coca-Cola, they'll deliver it to you. So if they have to buy it, they'll have to buy it. If they have it, they have it. But you don't have a share that's actually in your name. What I did, and I did it for kicks, really, was I called up Coca-Cola and I said, I want to buy a share of stock. And I bought it directly from Coca-Cola, and I have a certificate. I have a certificate, and I have one share of Coca-Cola. So I used to be in the car with the kids, and we would see a Coca-Cola truck driving by, and I would say, look at the back driver's side wheel, the molecule all the way on the bottom over there, that's mine. That's my tire molecule over there, because I have one share of Coca-Cola. I have a chelik. So in the tzibur, in the Dvarim Shebikdusha, in the Beis HaKnesses, in the Svarim, the members of the tzibur, every member of the tzibur has a certain amount of ownership. Now let's boil this down to a very simple case. Reuven and Shimon have a partnership in a house. Okay, Reuven owns 50% of the house, Shimon owns 50% of the house. Now they get into a fight. Shimon turns around and says, I am assering my portion of the house on you. You're not allowed to have any hana from my portion of the house. Reuven tells Shimon, well, yeah, you're not allowed to have any hana from my portion of the house. So yeah, you could do that, just like any other property. Learn Mesechus Nedarim. If Reuven wants to aser Shimon and prohibit Shimon from deriving any hana, from deriving any benefit from his property, he can do that. So, okay, this is my property. Says the Mechaber, what do we do when it comes to the tzibur? What if some character gets up and some character says, I'm asering my chelik of the Beis HaKnesses on everybody? He gets angry at the tzibur. They didn't give him the aliyah that he wanted. So he goes out, he wants to aser the tzibur on his chelik of the Beis HaKnesses. Now, that's a real problem. The reason it's a real problem is, A, like we said, he does have ownership. But the bigger problem is that because we paskin ein brera, there's no way to ever definitively decide what portion of the Beis HaKnesses, what portion of the Sfarim belongs to this character. We can't even go ahead now and say, all right, there's 100 people in the town, so he has a 100th share, so we're going to go to the back of the shul, and we're going to carve out a little square, 6 inches by 6 inches. We're going to determine that that's a 1/100th, and we're going to say that belongs to Ruvain, and no one's allowed to use it because Ruvain answered his chelik on the whole tzibur. No, that would only work if we paskin yesh breira. If we paskin yesh breira, so we could say we are now determining lemafreya that that's his chelik. The truth is, if we paskin yesh breira, it would be even simpler. If we paskin yesh breira, so we would say that whenever anybody else comes into the shul to use the shul, we would say he's using his chelik, and the chalakim that belong to everybody else who didn't aser, he's not using that guy's chelik. But we don't paskin yesh breira, so we have no way of determining exactly what this fellow's chelik is. So if we would allow one guy the ability to aser his chelik on the other people of the town, we would have a real heavy-duty problem here. So says the Mechaber, not a problem. Ein adam yachal lesar chelka b'meis hakneses v'lo yimei asvarim. Nobody has the authority to aser the other people of the town from using his chelik, not in the Beis HaKnesses and not in the Sfarim that belong to the Beis HaKnesses. V'im asar, and if he does get up and do it, einoi klum. It doesn't count for anything. Says the Mishnah Berurah, cut and peivav. Ein adam, a person can't do it. Says the Mishnah Berurah, why not? First, the Mishnah Berurah says, Hainu bein l'yachid bein l'chal hakol. He can't aser it on one individual. He can't aser it on the whole tzibur. Einoi klum, ois cut and peizayin. Kain tiknu ha-ge'oinim. It's a takonas ha-ge'oinim that it doesn't work. Dim loy kain, because if not, for this takonas ha-ge'oinim, kol echad sheyeh lo dvar ma im chaveroi, anybody gets into a fight with his friend, yeser chelko yalav, he'll aser his chelik on the guy, umemele yehei kol beis hakneses asur olav. And now, the entire beis hakneses is going to be aser to this guy, the ein breira, because we paskin ein breira. Okay. Says the Mechaber Sif Tezayin, Mi shehishil beisoy lebeis hakneses. If somebody lent his house to the tzibur to be turned into a beis hakneses. Now understand what this means. This doesn't mean that some people wanted to get together and make a minyan on Shabbos or on Pesach or on Sukkot, and the guy said, I have a big dining room, come, we'll daven in my dining room. That's not what this means. What this means is somebody had a house. The tzibur needed a beis hakneses. This guy has an extra house. He lent his house to the tzibur and said, turn my house into a beis hakneses. But it means that we're really making this house into a beis hakneses. We're investing it with kedushas beis hakneses. This is going to be a beis hakneses kavua. Now, it's on loan. It's not owned by the tzibur, it's on loan, but he's really turning it into a beis hakneses. You can see this in the Biur Halacha, in Dibur HaMaschel, Misha Hishel Beisay LeBeis HaKnesses. Says the Chavetz Chaim Ritzayin Loimar, what the Mechaber wants to say is, Shehishilam, that he lent it to the tzibur, Sheyil of Shem Beis HaKnesses Gomor, to make it a real beis hakneses. Masha ein kain, im hishel lahem beisoy, if he just lent them his house, sheyavayu lehispal by ba'alma, that they should just come and make a minyan there. Ein bechlal zed. That's not this halacha. The halacha that we're talking about over here is, guy had an extra house, he lent it to the tzibur to mamish make it a beis hakneses. Says the Mechaber, Misha hishel beisoy lebeis hakneses. Somebody lent his house to be a bona fide beis hakneses, v'yesh lo meriva im echad me'akol, and he's in a fight with one of the members of the tzibur. Eino yochal la'asra, he cannot prohibit this individual from coming in and davening there, ele imkein ye'esrena l'chal hakol ke'echad, unless he asers the entire tzibur. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Peches. Eino yochal la'asra, he cannot aser one specific individual. So he lent his house to be a beis hakneses. but the house still belongs to him. So now he gets up and he tells the board of the shul, Ruvain, you guys know I can't stand the guy. Ruvain, he can't come into my house. He can't come daven in the basic Knesset. You can't do that. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Hainu mitzad cherim Rabbeinu Gershom ma'or hagoyla sheyesh al zeh. This was a specific cherim to Rabbeinu Gershom, that you can't do such a thing, and you can't do it. Vatam, the reason, Vatam nireh, it would appear that the reason is to choshishu lebizayin dahu gavra. This would be mavaza pnei chaver barabim. You're being mavaza a person. Everybody's coming to shul. They ask him, "How come I didn't see you in shul?" I'm not allowed to walk into shul because Shimon donated his house. The shul really belongs to Shimon. Shimon said, "I'm not allowed to walk in." So, Chem Rabbeinu Gershom, you're not allowed to be mavaza a person like this. Vatam near the chashul b'zayin dehu gavra, and the Mishnah Berurah sends us to Ayin Gittin Nun Vav Amud Aleph to the Maisa of Kamtza Bar Kamtza, where you see how terrible it is to be malba b'nei chaver barabim. Ma'ashe'en ken kisheyasa l'kulam leka kisufa. But if the guy decides to go ahead and aser the whole tzibur, if the guy says, "Yeah, I lent the house to the town to use as a base of Knesset, so now I'm asering on the whole tzibur," kisheyasa l'kulam leka kisufa. So then you're not embarrassing one person. You're not picking out one person and embarrassing him. And this concept that he could answer the entire kehillah, that's only if he lent it in a very general way. But if he specified, I'm lending it to the tzibur for the tzibur to use it for a year, then Ayin b'Yerdei Siman Reish Chafal Sif Vav V'Zayin T'yesh Plukta B'Chali Surah B'Sech Hazman. If he lent it for a specified amount of time, so now it's not so pashut that he could go ahead now and make tanoim on what's going to happen inside of that time frame. Says the Ramah, Hagav V'Davke Shehishal T'chila Stam. But this is only if when he lent the house to the tzibur, first he made the loan in an open, general way, without any strings attached. But if when he first lent it, he made it tonight. He's lent it, but he said, "Listen, I'm reserving the right to lock out whoever I want to lock out." Then, or if he never really made it a beferish alone to the tzibur, then then it's not covered by the Cherem Rabbeinu Gershom, and then he could always be moicha and stop people from coming in. Be a terrible thing to do, but he has the power to do it. Okay, we're going to stop over here. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The source of limud HaTorah should be Megan and God's Klai Yisrael, the Baruch Shem Shitsen, Yeshua's reverse pronounced Shidduchim to all those in need. We should be zeichet to see the B'Yeskel Tzedek, B'mehera v'yameinu, Amen, be well.